Hello, so we're going to get started on this live stream today. Originally this week I wanted to get into some of the content of Jeffrey Allen's work. I didn't get that far. I only got as far as discussing the effects, as discussing I wonder if it's actually live. Oh, there it is. There's a bit of a delay there. Okay, so for this week, I only got as far as discussing some of the things you have to be aware of when you are developing psychic gifts. So looks like there's going to be a part 3 for this. Today will be shorter than usual. It'll just cover the material that I was able to research and compile for this live. Okay. Hi, Ravina. Nice to see you here. Okay, so developing your spiritual gifts, part 2. So when we're talking about spiritual gifts, these spiritual gifts, they're really an extension of your abilities and really your intuition. Your intuition is guiding you through this. And last week, we talked about developing intuition, psychic abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. So clairvoyant is seeing visions. It's what we are most familiar with when we talk about psychic gifts. Clairaudient is the hearing thing. So it's less familiar. We're less familiar with it, but it's like hearing something when you know, oh, that sound didn't happen in this world, but maybe it came from a higher dimension or from your higher self. Clairsentient, those are the emotions. Clairsentient, you can pick up on the emotions of other people. You can also have a strengthened emotional guidance system, and this is really helpful when you are making decisions about who to trust, what to do in certain situations. And claircognizance. So this primarily comes through the mind, and we are familiar with people who are very analytical and maybe scientific, rely a lot on logic, so they will be most attuned to being claircognizant. And this is the level of knowing something, but not knowing how you got to know it or where it really came from. It's this deep sense of knowing. So you have primary dominant abilities, and these abilities are used to access higher dimensional worlds, energy, and information. So when you're spiritual awakening, you're going to be having these systems within you being upgraded and having a greater level of sensitivity to them. We talked about some techniques to develop focus and directly stimulate the third eye pineal gland. So one of these is getting the mask that blocks out light and keeping your eyes open. So we're cutting off one sense, and then that is awakening the visual sense towards a higher dimension, because the pineal gland, or the third eye, is sensitive to different frequencies of light than our eyes are. So it can pick up on different things when we start to awaken it. And in all of this process, it requires being out of the ego in surrender and being in a peaceful, loving heart space. Okay, so one of the things that we touched on but we really didn't get into last week is the issue of discernment. Discernment is huge. This is something that you're going to be developing along the way as you begin to learn about this and practice these kind of techniques and experiment. And it's not something that you're going to be good at right away. It's going to take time. It's going to take experience to develop this level of discernment. So discernment gives you protection. It helps you to be able to tell what is true, what is false, and even more importantly, what kind of energies and frequencies you are connecting to, because information is always coming from somewhere. Where is it coming from? And when we're using psychic gifts, we're getting information, different kinds of information that is interpreted different ways or received in different ways, but it's all information. It's all energy. So the source of the energy matters, and we can feel between sources of energy and see, do I like this? Do I not like this? How does this resonate with me? And you start to get attuned to that. So this is basically just stepping up your awareness, because we meet people and we say, I like their energy, I don't like their energy, and we make decisions about who we want to be around, who we want to be friends with, what companies we want to work for, depending on their work environment. So we already make all these kind of decisions based on our impressions of people. We don't have all the information about them, but we do get a sense of who they are, what their vibe is like. And this is the same for any kind of beings in non-physical form. So we've got the lower dimensional beings and the higher dimensional beings. Maybe not lower dimensional, but you can have, say, 4D or 5D beings that are on a higher plane or on a lower plane. A really good illustration for this was a video that I haven't directly discussed in the live stream, but I did reference as a link. And I will find that and post that in the link for this one. It's talking about 4D, 5D, these higher dimensional spaces where they have not just like angels and light beings, but there is what you can call demons and this lower vibrational energy that is embodied. So we've got these different frequencies, these different sources of information. When the new age really blew up, a lot of people started astral projecting, traveling out of the body and coming into contact with these kind of beings. There's a lot of discovery, and unfortunately there was a lot of hurt and pain that happened because there wasn't a good awareness of being able of how to differentiate between this loving, heart-centered energy and this parasitic energy that gives part truth, part lie, and it's really there to suck energy from you. So you can imagine if you are connecting with this spirit guide, and it's this new spirit guide, then you want to give it some time to really feel into and observe what kind of energy they have. They're not just feeding you a bunch of information that maybe appeals to the ego, it appeals to the mind, like it appeals to the spiritual ego, but then at the end of the day, it's kind of empty, it's not relevant, and it doesn't help you grow. And by tuning into you and feeding you all this information in exchange, they can be siphoning energy from you. So, of course, we don't want to get anxious or fearful about this, but just have an awareness of it. At the end of the day, you are an extremely powerful being, and just having a good level of awareness and being able to recognize some of the things that we've talked about here. Okay, so I am referencing the video Psychic Development, How to Easily Discern Psychic Information. And this is a video by Gigi Young, same creator that we discussed last week. And we are talking about discernment. So when you are getting information, so let's say if you're getting imagery, like the visual information, you're getting like the knowledge kind of information, you're picking up on different things. And of course, learning how to do this is somewhat vague. So you're developing this skill, and it's really an extension of your intuition. So you're deepening your intuition, and it may be something that you're already picking up. Like, for example, for me, knowing what do I talk about in a video, an idea shows up and I talk about it, and it's not something that I plan out or think about like, okay, I need to say this, this, and this. But it's something that arises from within me, and I'm able to talk about it because I'm releasing that need to control what is happening. So I'm putting the ego aside, and it's not really channeling, or doesn't feel like it, but there is this wisdom that comes through sometimes, that it's not, oh, me, the ego, oh, like I came up with this, I'm so brilliant. It's more just like, this is what's coming through when you show up and you're accessing that higher level of creativity. Like whenever you're doing anything creative, you are accessing like a certain space. So this is something that can show up within you. So for example, you know, me coming up with ideas for videos, like there's a certain element of claircognizance there that shows up. You know, it's not maybe in a big way, like a big fancy way, but this is a small example of how you can already have this ability that you've developed in other areas, but you can just fine-tune it and develop it to suit your purposes. For example, maybe receiving direction about choices in your life, which is always filtered through your own discernment and common sense, and of course, all your prior experience and knowledge from your life. So you're always maintaining your personal power. So not all information is correct, valuable, and relevant for the present. It's like the internet, right? The internet is a source of information. It's a network. When you're connecting into vibrations and energies, you're connecting into a network, sources of information. Not all of them are useful or relevant for you. Some of them you just don't want them. How do you know you are not receiving information from the false light or lower astral? So this is a really important question. And the quality of information differs. So, you know, this is always something that you are looking at and holding space for, just questioning what kind of information is coming through. You can always compare the information with other sources. You can do some research, like what are other people saying, and also your own intuition, sensing the energy, like what does this energy feel like? So within this process, there are two elements that affect this. You know, there's a potentially dangerous element connecting to lower astral entities, or we also call that like the demonic realm. And some people get connected to these sources of information that can start siphoning their energy, and there can be this obsessive quality to it. This makes me think of, for example, let's say an addiction. You pursue an addiction or feed an addiction because it gives you a bit of a high, it makes you feel a bit better, but it never satisfies you. You always have to go back for more because you're always left with this empty feeling. So this is really what it makes me think about. Like, if you're getting all this information from this source, then it might be a little bit empty. It might not be super relevant, super helpful, but it might just trigger this inflation of the spiritual ego, but then cause you to drop the other areas of your life that are really important. Maybe meditation, exercise, diet, other interests and hobbies, relationships with other people, any of the ones that were maybe really important to you before this point. And of course, as you begin to spiritually grow, your relationships are going to change, and there's going to be that kind of change in there too. But there's also this awareness of like what's healthy for you and what's not. Ultimately, you do decide what's healthy and what's not. So there's the dangerous aspect of it, but then there's also the aspect of having a healthy balance in your life. And having a healthy balance in your life helps support your psychic gifts, because it helps you to receive information in a coherent way, in a consistent way, avoiding like the highs and the lows. And your energy affects your level of consciousness, which affects the quality of information or whatever frequencies you're connecting to. And having this healthy balance just helps stabilize the chi or prana in your body and level it out in a cohesive way. So the chi, the prana in your body, a lot of this is tied to your ability to connect to higher level frequencies, and whatever you're connecting to, that's your source of information. So, and I did mention this in the last video, health is really important on all levels. So humans make mistakes, right? It's part of being human, and not all information you receive is coherent and correct. So what information? You can think of channelers, psychics, mediums. Those are some of the ones we talked about last week, but there's also all the information that you can receive through your own abilities as well, that show up in different forms. So you can have lower states of consciousness brought on by stress or other factors in your life. We have this natural ebb and flow, and all of this affects like whatever kind of work we are doing spiritually. Your state of consciousness and brain coherence affects the type and quality of information that you connect to. So you have to practice to learn what your higher vibrational frequencies feel like in your body compared to lower vibrational frequencies. Like, this is an individual experience. Like, this is something that you're doing yourself. So there is that level of discovering and feeling that kind of contrast. You're going to have low points in your life. So this will help show you this contrast and this difference. You can be all gung-ho about doing this, but there is that level of awareness where you can realize, okay, so this is something that I can ease into and take it slow, because there's a lot of awareness that you are developing and growing in. And of course, this builds on all the work that you've done previously, emotional healing work, learning to live from a heart-centered space of unconditional love. All of these things are foundational to support this kind of work. So developing awareness of the condition of your consciousness at that moment. We're not always conscious of where we are in terms of like how we're close to fear and lack versus love and abundance or love and light, like where we fall on that spectrum at any given moment. We don't always have a good sense or awareness if we're not intentionally tuning into that. And we'll often cycle through different energies in our lives. And, you know, this happens, like we know with the new moon, the full moon, we have these cycles and there's different energies that are coming in and going out. So, and there's different themes and topics that we are working through at any given moment as well. So whenever you get new information, you want to quarantine this information. And you can put it in what Gigi Young calls an experimental phase. You don't believe the messages right away. So intuitive messages are energy, and they interact with your energy. Once the message is received, it can start meshing with your consciousness, like being filtered through you. So, and she differentiates like merging with the information and the frequencies or whatever you're connecting to versus just observing it. So this is more in the observing stage. So I said meshing with your consciousness, maybe that's not the best description. So you will start to get a sense of whether or not this information is in alignment with you. Just like if you watch someone's video on YouTube, you can see, you know what, I don't think this is for me. So, and you can start to tell if this information matches with what higher vibrational energy feels like in your body. So there's energy to everything, and you can start to differentiate and feel this out. So yeah, it's just like when something starts to feel off, when someone says or does something that crosses a boundary, invades your space, or doesn't have your best interests at heart. You can have that same sense when receiving messages. And even if you can't pinpoint or explain what is wrong about it yet, it just feels off. And then eventually, once you process it or receive validation from someone else who senses the same thing, you can articulate it better. Because like that's how we discover our boundaries. It's through this process of tuning into our emotions and tuning into like, ooh, like that doesn't make me feel comfortable. Like that's uncomfortable. Like I'm not okay with that. So it's really important to verify what is true. And you do that with like connecting to your higher self, so which is you, basically, and other people and sources. And you can start recognizing what is from a lower spectrum of consciousness. And, you know, like we talked about in the Divine Union live streams, we're talking about separation consciousness versus divine union consciousness. And of course, the divine union consciousness, you know, the divine union comes from aligning with your higher self, from integrating the inner feminine and inner masculine, that anima and animus. So really developing that full level of integration within yourself. And by doing that, you can develop this level of discernment. So we talked about, like, just to mention something, it's, any kind of judgment. So here's judgment's different from discernment, right? So judging, and you know what? The judging can come from a place of like that protective mechanism where you're just trying to keep yourself safe. So you're judging other people. Very different from discernment, because discernment is coming from this space of love. Like, you're not feeling attacked. And you don't like need to defend yourself. So, this lower level consciousness, I noticed that I needed to become less judgmental of my coworkers. That was an example that I gave. Like, that was something that I noticed, that I needed to work on. I needed to show more unconditional love towards them, and also towards myself for the same things that I was judging myself for, that I was judging them for. And I still do it. Yep, it just keeps coming up. We keep working on it. And this is the process. I talked about this morning's video, the core wounds, and how like these core wounds, they really end up triggering, these different emotions: fear, anger, agitation, shame, guilt. I listed these different emotions in that video that show up when our core wounds are triggered. And guess what? We get stuck in attaching to the stories around those triggers caused by core wounds. You're gonna stay stuck in that lower energy. And if you try to start channeling or receiving information from that place, first of all, there's going to be a distortion, because your ego is going to get in the way, because that you're operating from a very like a mind ego place, very survival mechanism place. So whatever message you're getting is likely going to be distorted as it's filtered through you and you interpret it. But also, like what sources of information are you connecting to when you're in that space? So that's something that is important to consider. You need to question information and maintain a certain level of objectivity throughout this process. So a good meditation practice and developing a harmonious balance within yourself through a healthy lifestyle. Can't emphasize this enough. And this goes together with doing energy work and removing any attachments to lower consciousness streams of energy information. Because whatever stream you're connecting to, like, that's going to affect you. And yeah, we want to feel good. We want to feel energized. We want to feel the beautiful, fulfilling peace, contentment, states of love. If there's this urgency and this panic, I don't think that might be a little bit of a cue that is that really what we want to connect to? It's like, imagine this, if you think about it, like the salesman who's like, trying to make you buy, and you've got only a certain amount of time, like a limited amount of time, right? This sleazy salesman. Yeah, well, lower astral entities are like sleazy salesmen. That's a good way to think of it. So I didn't get slides prepared today on energy work, but hopefully I'll get to that for the live stream for next week. So we can kind of see how this is all tying together. We've got like the awareness of our levels of consciousness, really where we're at in that, and we're just making micro adjustments all the time, every day. I love writing in my journal and just realizing, you know what? I spent a lot of time and gave a lot of energy today to this pattern of thought, which it seemed really important. But now I look back and say, you know what? That was fear-based. That was rooted in a lot of judgment and self-criticism. A lot of that was coming out of fear that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, this kind of lack mentality. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can let this go. I think I can let all these neurotic thoughts go. And yeah, I can release all the emotions that come along with it until it shows up next time. So Gigi Yang was mentioning about these streams of consciousness or energy information that you can connect to. So she was saying, like, don't jump in right away and fully engage with it. So this is her advice. How does that feel for you? This is something that you really have to experience for yourself. So, and she said you can ask questions. Where is this from? What is this trying to say? And just not investing in external sources of information, regardless of whether you're channeling them or not. Don't invest in them as an authority, right? You are the authority. You are the gatekeeper to your consciousness, to your ideas, your beliefs. So be very careful, be very selective about what you let in. Be an objective observer. So it's just like when you practice being an objective observer with the thoughts and emotions that you experience. And this is something that I've been working on, like even before I started this channel, but noticing the feelings that are coming up within me and realizing that, you know what, a lot of these thoughts and emotions, they're not directly related to whatever situation is happening. They are arising because these core wounds are being triggered. They're being poked and prodded and they're not happy. But it's something that is being healed through the process, the more you release resistance to it happening. Yeah, so with the video on core wounds, when the emotional wound comes up as thoughts that reflect this core wound, that I will be abandoned, I am stupid, I am bad, defective, and you attach to these thoughts, like that's when you think they're true, and you reinforce lower vibrational belief systems and identify with them. And the emotions of anger and frustration that come up when some of these core wounds are triggered, as for example, there's more emotions that can come up too, and you take them very seriously and think there is something in your external environment that you need to fix so you don't feel those emotions. Like that's when you perceive those emotions as indicators of threats, when that's not what really is happening. You're really healing and processing, we can call it trauma. It can be situations that maybe you wouldn't call trauma, or you wouldn't recognize as trauma, but they left an imprint on your body in a physiological way, your mind and your emotions. There's so much awareness that from doing this kind of work that you develop that really applies a lot to this kind of discernment, right? So you apply discernment in detaching from the thoughts and emotions that you experience, but also detaching from the other things that you're experiencing as information that is coming in psychically. Okay, so also recognize and differentiate what is yours and what isn't yours. We talked about last week about it's the feeling one, where you can feel other people's emotions. Clairsentience, I think. Right? And we talked about how, the people who are really sensitive to this, but they don't know how to shut it off. They're just taking in other people's emotions all the time, and they confuse them with their own. So there is this level of detachment that you can have with all the sensory information that you're receiving, where you separate yourself from it and don't take it all on as yours right away. There's this level of where you're putting this information or this sensory information, whether that's like psychic or simply just your sense information, and it is going into this experimental zone. What did we call it? Experimental phase. Yeah, you can receive thoughts and emotions psychically that aren't yours. This is the tricky part of this. And some people, they already struggle with this. But as you develop your gifts, this is where it becomes really important to be able to detach yourself from what you're experiencing. So you interpret the information that you receive, and ego can distort that translation of information. And also you're developing awareness around how your state affects how you interpret information. Discerning false light / lower astral realm, demonic realms, also called chaos realms. So these are parasitic. They have information that is regurgitated, has some truth, has some lies, right? That's the really tricky part of it. You don't know right away what's the truth, what's the lie. So these streams of information connect to your body differently than higher density light. False light and truth cannot coexist. So, and that's why, you're connecting to this beautiful unconditional love, divine neutrality, peace within yourself, to keep the air clear. Keep yourself a pure channel. Train tracks, they need to connect to each other. You need to have these connections. So, and you know how train tracks can shift? They have this, they can move train tracks so it doesn't connect to this track anymore, but it shifts over, connects to that track. So your state, your level of consciousness, as it fluctuates and changes, that is your train track. And you can shift it to whatever stream of consciousness you want to connect to. And you can compare new streams of energy against the feelings of love and peace that you are familiar with, that you've developed within yourself, that you have this level of familiarity with, as basically your baseline that you maintain in your life. And of course, the more you heal old emotional wounds and patterns, the more you're able to maintain that peace. So it's totally okay for you to go through a period of healing those patterns and having those emotions come up, and it can be, it's a lot, overwhelming. But, that is moving towards the goal. So the source of information, it really does matter. And as you connect to it, it affects your body, your mind, and your spirit as you interact with light energy. So psychic abilities involve experiencing higher dimensional worlds, energy, and information via the senses. And this information can come in blocks of light, like we talked about last time with the claircognizance. And that's why you only want to observe it at first and avoid engaging with it right away. And of course, we're using terms and language here that is esoteric, like it's very abstract. What does it mean? It's kind of pointing us in a direction. So like I'm talking about information, messages, light messages, right? We're getting more and more esoteric here. And this is why we're grounding it through our practices like journaling, meditation, and healthy lifestyle. I went skiing today, and I've been doing my walks as well, and I find that helps so much. You get some endorphins, and it helps just like unravel my thoughts. A lot of like grumpiness sometimes comes up, and that's releasing. And we're going to talk about that hopefully next time, about Jeffrey Allen's work, because one really interesting thing that Jeffrey Allen said was that you go through these growth periods where you are feeling like this agitation or grumpiness that is coming up. Or like maybe you'll be listening to someone, a speaker, and you'll fall asleep and you'll miss it. He said that is you releasing old consciousness. So, and that's affected me a lot, because now I think about this way, because I do get these grumpy periods. Not as much as I used to, but they do show up. And I have to remember, you know what? That's okay. Just old consciousness releasing, like it's fine. Nothing's wrong. Okay, so any questions? And I am exploring this just the way you are, so I am not an expert. So yeah, we can discuss, ideas and questions. I'm not always going to have the answer right away. So this is the end of the slides that I have for today. So it's shorter than usual, but almost been an hour, so that's decent. Kind of interesting today. So I only referenced one of the videos that I posted in the community post. I will put the link for this video that I referenced in the description and also in the comments right after this live. So the biggest themes that we talked about today was connecting to love, connecting to peace, connecting to joy. And this is, has been a theme that has been coming up. And this is so important because this is your spiritual protection. It's like the spiritual barrier. You know, as soon as you start going to fear and fearing demonic entities, fearing lower astral entities, you are giving up your power. And I've been in a place in my life where I had so much fear that it wouldn't have been a good idea for me to start practicing these spiritual gifts, because I had so much fear that I was basically giving my power away. And so I was really susceptible to, like when I was getting night terrors, and really susceptible to connecting to sources of information and streams of consciousness that were dark, because I was in that state of fear. And as soon as you're in fear, like, you can think about it like you're easy to manipulate. But if you're in love, like it's you know, like when, like, yeah, the salesperson trying to get you to buy, right? If you're in fear, yeah, it's easier to manipulate you. If you're in love, you're like, I'm full, I'm happy, I'm like, I don't really need that. So you're harder to manipulate. Energy work is the real deal. So looking forward to Jeffrey Allen's session. Yeah. So I'm just going for so I took the course Duality by Jeffrey Allen on Mind Valley, so that's what I'm going to be referencing in terms of content. If you want to try out the course, Mind Valley is offering a discount right now, so you can register and sign up, and then within 15 days ask for a refund. So that's like the 15-day free trial, and you can decide whether or not you're comfortable with that, because they do charge your credit card, and then you ask for the refund within the trial period. But if you feel comfortable with that, I really enjoy Jeffrey Allen's energy, and I'm only going to be doing like a summary, a lot of the information in that course. Like I'm not going to be like basically using it here. But it is very interesting, and to be perfectly honest, I have not been diligent about practicing it. It felt uncomfortable, and it was a lot of focus, and I just didn't want to do it. This is a goal for me. I want to start working on this energy work, really building up this foundation for enhancing my spiritual gifts. And, you know, like we said last week, everyone has spiritual gifts. They just show up in different ways. Everyone has different strengths. But this is available to everyone. I've learned for me the Lord's Prayer helps shift my energy. Awesome. Thank you, Christine. That is fantastic when you have a tool that helps you shift your energy, that works for you. And I used to research different things and kind of have this neurotic energy, like I need to do this and this and this and this, and like it shouldn't be like that. It should be something that works for you. Like you don't have to do a bunch of things to protect yourself if it's stressing you out. The important thing is what works for you. The summary would be enough. You explain things well. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's gonna be great. And you know what? It's okay, like that it's being spread out through multiple weeks. Because yeah, for me personally, like I haven't even gotten to starting the practice for what we discussed last week. So I'm gonna try to focus on doing some of that this week. Okay, so yeah, I don't have much left to talk about. A question that came up for me was, have you ever felt judgment about feeling like you are missing or not like showing spiritual gifts? Like you see other people with spiritual gifts and you're like kind of jealous of them. Like I've felt that so strongly, and I've thought, you know what, like maybe it's just not for me. And that's kind of like saying that, oh, I'm just not good at math. When, you know, when you apply yourself, you might need more time, you might need more explanation, you might need a lot more practice than someone who's naturally good at it. But, you know, that's a skill that you can learn that will help you in your life. And like the fact that you might have to work harder for it, it doesn't diminish the value of it. Like it still can be something really valuable. And you going through the process of discovering it for yourself, you can discover new aspects to it, right? Like if you're learning math and like the way someone explained it to you doesn't make sense, you know, you going through the process of figuring out what makes sense to you makes it so you have this new skill that maybe you can teach to others, and explain it to them in a way that makes sense to them. So you are actually building on the collective knowledge and awareness of this skill set. How do you balance work with spirituality? As in, isn't it difficult to deal with people on a daily basis and yet stay centered? Yeah, that's true. I do work full time and I work with people. I'm thankful that I do not work in the service industry. I work in tech. So I'm shielded, and I chose this intentionally. I'm shielded from a lot of negative energy. Yeah, so I'm really thankful for that. I'm shielded from a lot of the stress that comes from those kind of jobs. So if you have that kind of job, I feel for you. For me, it was so stressful. But, you know, here's the thing. You need to take whatever shows up in your life and realize, you know, there's something that you can apply there. And think of it as, you know, this is something that's providing some resistance for you. So like when you're doing weight training, you increase the weight of the weights. You increase how heavy the weights are as you get better at lifting weights, to provide more resistance, to build more muscle, to get stronger. So dealing with situations in your life, dealing with people, this is going to provide contrast, it's going to provide resistance, it's going to show you really, really clearly where your limiting beliefs show up, what your core wounds are. It seems to me a lot of the core wounds, they're quite similar, and there's quite a bit of overlap regardless of what your attachment style is. But dealing with people is so challenging, and it forces us out of our comfort zone, forces us to drop the ego, to surrender, and can really be beneficial if we're willing to be really mindful about it. So here's what I find when I go to work is that I struggle. I struggle so much. It's so hard to focus on work and like be triggered. This happens to me all the time. I go home and then I somehow make it through the day. I go home and I journal about it, and then like it makes sense to me. And it's like, yeah, I know all these concepts. But like I feel confused, I feel lost sometimes, and this is part of the process of this old consciousness leaving and anchoring into this new level of consciousness. So It's not always going to be feel comfortable. Um, yeah, like you're gonna have those ups and downs. Um, and about staying centered, I'm just gonna go back to that's why I work so hard to try and focus on the exercise, yoga, stretching, meditation. I really haven't done that much meditation lately. Um, Energy work. I do massage. There's the Ravina, um, the, the source of information you mentioned last week. I forget the name. Maybe it's Mind Garden. Um, all of those things, they'll help recenter you. Ultimately, you can't just stay centered all the time. Like you're gonna, like a teeter-totter, you're kind of going in and out of balance, and you're adjusting it. So you're going from the big swings to the smaller adjustments. I've been working from home since a couple years, so it's easy to stay spiritual, but I'm starting a new job from Monday, so I'm a bit worried. Pray for me. Lots of healing opportunities will come up. That's exciting. Like I'm excited for you having a new job. And yeah, well, you know what? It's an adventure, and you like the judgment of how spiritual you are. It's like, well, who's judging you, right? Like, is that the ego judging you? It's sure, like it's nice to feel spiritual, but we know, like in the spiritual work, like you can feel like really not spiritual, and that's part of the process, right? Mind Garden Mastery, thank you. Yeah, journaling is a great way to stay on track. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Ravina, you are gonna do awesome. So awesome. You're gonna be such a beautiful beam and beacon of light and love. And I believe there is so much purpose in, this new opportunity coming up for you. And it's really not just about you and your spiritual growth. It's like you have a certain level of mastery that you're ready to influence others, and you can't control always how that influence is going to happen. You just show up as this beautiful, incredible lighthouse that is basically shining in the dark and just letting your light shine. Yeah, this is a new period of trust within yourself. Like, you can trust that you have the wisdom and the abilities and skills and knowledge to deal with whatever comes up in a beautiful way. Thank you, Heather. You're an angel. Thank you, too. You are an angel, too, Ravina. And thank you so much, Christine, for joining us in the chat and sharing. Oh, I'm so touched. And probably the last thing I'm gonna say is, like, enjoy your life. I got a new idea for a video called Earth is Your Day Job. And the premise behind it is basically that, do your spiritual work, do the heavy lifting, but then in a sense, like, treat that as your job. Like, after your job, you go home, you do your other stuff, you enjoy your life, you have your hobbies. So, like, that's balance too, is finding enjoyment in whatever you like to do. Like, just like be part of the human experience. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. So we're going to have more content next week on the same topic. And yeah, maybe we will have some more experiences to share in the week that comes up. So I love all of you, and thank you for joining. And have a beautiful week.